All right. Well, good morning, everyone. So my name's Aidan Shaw. I'm from an organisation called Disability Sport and Recreation. And I'm thrilled today to be launching the Chain online training program. It's a module that's been put together for a number of months by some really great partners and in the establishment of a cycling alliance. I'm going to also be letting people into the chat. So I do apologize if there's any delays from our end, but thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's wonderful to have you all here, and we're proudly supported in this project by the Victoria State Government. Before we begin, I'd love to do an acknowledgement of country, and I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and the people on which we're meeting today, paying my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. As part of that, I understand we're all meeting on different lands, so acknowledging everyone where they are, and obviously we're acknowledging that sovereignty was never ceded as well. So as I mentioned, I'm from an organisation called Disability Sport and Recreation. Our organisation is an organisation that tries to provide better choice, access and participation to people with a disability in sport and active recreation. We want to create a Victoria where people with a disability can choose and access any sport they want to participate in. And to do that, we work with partners like University of Melbourne, the Victoria State Government, to create societal change. Now, today we're very lucky to have John Carey, who's a physiotherapist from the University of Melbourne, who's been putting this program together. We've also want to acknowledge Rachel Tuvey, who unfortunately this morning can't be with us, but she's done a power of work in getting this project to start and to where it is today. Now, if there's any questions that you have throughout this presentation, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to make this as interactive as we can, but really this is today around John talking to us a little bit about the training program, and I guess giving you the opportunity to pilot that as part of this over the next few weeks. So really excited to have John here. And John, I'm going to pass it over to you and look forward to hearing more about today, and well done on getting us to this point.
Lovely, thanks Aidan. I would also like to begin by acknowledging and paying my respects to the Wurundjeri people and the traditional custodians of the land on which I am working from today. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders here today, passing my respects to their elders past and present and emerging also. So yeah, thanks for the introduction, Aidan. My name is John Carey. I'm a physio with a background in community disability and paediatrics. And I just started my PhD last year through the University of Melbourne. So a special, just to introduce and a thanks to my supervisors, who include Professor Alicia Spittle, Dr. Rachel Tuvey, Professor Christine Innes and Professor Nora Shields. I'd also like to give a big thanks to the spoke load of people who helped along the way in this chain journey. My partner, VPRS Physios, and the big collaborative team that we've had involved. So the basics of today are we're just aiming to provide a bit of an introduction to Chain, the program itself, and also the research that sits alongside it. So next slide please, Aidan. So what is Chain? Chain is an online training program that we've built together in using collaborative research approaches. So we had involvement and consultation with many different stakeholders in disability, cycling, education and sport, and to put this module together. The letters of Chain itself stand for cycling through health coaching, adaption, inclusion and supportive networks. And cumulatively, I suppose those letters are kind of formed from the emerging researches that's kind of showing that we need to have kind of the right people and the right resources around young people with disability and their families to help them to attain their cycling goals. And the focus of the training program itself will focus on evidence-informed cycling intervention for children and young people with disability, with the aim to kind of really enhance and empower the people who work with them in improving their knowledge and skills. And the primary drivers for why Chain has kind of come about. Cycling is a really popular goal for young people with disability. A recent study showed about 1 in 5 young people selected cycling as their active physical activity goal, and when given other options of different kind of sports and stuff. That was in the Participate study. And the other reason as well is, I suppose, the time was very ripe in terms that we had a really proactive and interactive team that were really willing to collaborate in terms of the Cycling Alliance that Aidan referred to. So as I mentioned, it's been put together with collaborative research approaches, and this involved a multitude of different kind of people. And so we had our funding body through Disability Sport and Rec and Sports Victoria, the educator team, which included Rachel Tuvey and myself and Ellen Armstrong, a physiotherapist up in Queensland. We had heavy involvement with our sector team, which involved collaborators from multiple different organisations in sports, sport and rec, disability, cycling, and other fields. And they included UniMelb, DSR, Special Olympics, inclusive sports training, bicycle networks, all cycling, Kids Plus, next disability team, and we also had cerebral palsy support network and some young people with disability involved in the kind of consultative process. And we're also very indebted to our reviewers, which included people who went over and reviewed the article and really reviewed the training program and really ensured that the content was up to where we wanted it to be. So some of those key people included Sarah Whedon, Aidan, Sarah Smith in Oz Cycling, Abby in another physio who's up in ACU, and Bicycle Networks, Mel Dunn and Louise Daniels as well.
And it's great to have, John, today, some people from those groups. It's great to have Solve here. Sarah Smith's about to just enter, and it's really great to, I guess what we wanted to create with creating this alliance and this group was a diversity of experience, and that included a diversity of cycling experience, but then also disability specific experience. So it's been great.
I should mention Andre as well, who brought his life experience of cycling as well into the program.
And that lived experience is really important. It's going to be important as we talk through the development of what we've created here. And yeah, it's just wonderful to have such a broad, I guess, group of organisations coming together. And it's really setting a bit of a template model of how broader disability sport and recreation alliances could work in the future as well.
Awesome. So just some further content on what Chain is. So Chain will involve, it's an online program as mentioned, and there's approximately 4 hours of content, and that will include articles, videos, case studies, quizzes and resources. And the idea being that it's a self-paced module, so you can complete it all in one sitting, or you can decide to space it out over 6 weeks. There's 6 there's 6 kind of modules, or 6 weeks in total, and each of them will take about 30 to 60 minutes per week. There's a little bit of a difference in the different weeks, and some weeks being a little bit more heavy in content than others. And there's a certificate of completion available on completing both the pre and post training surveys. And so that's a little bit about the online training program that will sit on Future Learn. And the research that sits alongside that is really where like my PhD kind of comes into it. So as part of trying to ensure that our Chain is a quality kind of program, and that it's doing what we kind of intend it to do, it's important to kind of tie it in with some research as well. So we're conducting a feasibility study to really just kind of gauge whether Chain can work as a learning tool. So whether it supports learning for different practitioners with pretty diverse backgrounds, and whether the online delivery is feasible and acceptable to users as well. The aim being that we're going to sample it first in Victoria and get feedback both before and after to really kind of evaluate the program. And this research involvement is kind of tied into Chain in that you'll access the module through some of the research surveys. So the estimation is that there'll be 20 to 60 minutes of research activities involved alongside Chain, depending on what you're willing to get involved in. Next slide, please, Aidan. And the focus of the study is feasibility. So by that, we're looking at different domains of what feasibility entails. So the biggest cog there is limited efficacy, which basically kind of means, is it actually effective at doing what it says it will do, which is, in this case, is it effective as a learning tool? So will it enhance the skills and knowledge of practitioners undertaking the module? Other areas or other domains that we're interested in checking out are things like practicality, whether you can use it and carry it out as intended in your own daily practice and daily life, whether it's acceptable or whether it's suitable and a good fit to what you as a practitioner are looking for within your role. And also we're looking at demand, so who can use it and the likelihood of use and demographics around that as well. And all these different all these different cogs are really important to kind of help us with this initial stage of kind of figuring out, can it work? And then eventually the idea being that we can adapt or expand it as we need to make it more, have a bigger reach and really fine tune it so that hopefully we can roll out in a bigger scale in different areas. So who can take part? The inclusion criteria for getting involved in Chain are providing services in Victoria. So as I mentioned, it's been piloted here in Victoria. We would like you to either work or volunteer in one of the following practitioners. So an OT or a physio, a teacher, a cycling coach, triathlon coach, and a sports and recreation practitioner, which we've left a little bit semi-open in a sense, in that it can be professional or volunteer in that role. So if you're involved in cycling as, say for example, as an exercise physiologist, you potentially could act, and there's options to select that within the surveys. We're interested in people who are potentially leading cycling programs or interventions, or who may either be interested in getting involved in leading them. You need to be over 18 years of age and have internet access to access the module itself, and to have a willingness, I suppose, to take part in some surveys, the training itself, and potentially an interview. So the research activities that I mentioned a few slides back, they would include completing a pre-training survey, which would be done as you access Chain, and then actually working through the content in Chain itself through FutureLearn. And while you're doing all that, we'll be collecting bits of information from how you kind of interact and use Chain. So like the percentage of Chain that you actually complete and that kind of thing, and also some of the answers in your quizzes as well. And then lastly, we would be asking you to take part in a post-training survey, which will be sent to you on completion of Chain. And then lastly, there's an option to be involved in an interview, which would take place kind of 1 to 3 months after Chain via Zoom. So that's just an optional undertaking for that one. Perfect. Next slide, please. And so how do you get involved? So the next slide will show you the poster on kind of how to get involved. But basically, the idea is that you'll access the link or the QR code, which is attached to the poster, or which will be filtered through via email. And that link will kind of bring you forward to a plain language summary, which kind of explains the information that I've provided here today in written form, and you can read through that at your leisure to find out whether you'd like to participate. And check that you're eligible, read the plain language summary, and provide consent. So I might just get you to go back to that slide in. Yeah, and then just undertake the pre-training survey, which will then eventually lead you to the link to access Chain, where you can sign up as a learner through FutureLearn. Perfect. Next slide then. And this is just the poster here. And so, yeah, we've got the information is there. The link is down in the very bottom box, and the QR code, which we're all well used to signing through now. And that's on the poster as well. So that's the best way to access and find out more information.
We'll be circulating all this around afterwards, and by yourselves being on this call, you'll be probably the first to be able to have access to the platform. So thank you for coming this morning to sort of see this, because yeah, it's a really exciting project, we think there's a lot of benefits across the sector, and this was funded through Sport and Recreation Victoria's autism funding, which came from a sort of inquiry into autism. So looking at, I guess, how we can support the broader sector. And although this does have a broader disability focus, we do acknowledge that funding came from that pool, and we're really grateful for that opportunity.
Perfect. And yeah, just for further information, you can contact me via email or by phone as well. And Rachel Tuvey is the principal investigator on this study as well. So her details will be in the documentation around the plain language summary.
Wonderful, John. And just to give everyone a bit of a sort of clarity, so throughout the duration of this project and when the application's open and people can access the survey and the platform, there'll be some check-in points as well, won't there? So we're hoping to deliver a webinar sort of halfway through, and a lot of this is around, I guess, we want to showcase best case and I guess real life examples, and organizations like Solve who are on this call have some brilliant case studies. So really want to start to visually show the impact that this module will have. And then at the end in June, we're hoping that, or June, July, you'll be able to do a bit of a summary and a check back in with everyone to show what we've learned from this as well over the next few months.
Yep. So I suppose just watch this space. Yep.
Absolutely. And so I guess looking forward, we're going to be inviting everyone to be involved in this project, and there will be the opportunity to complete that current practice survey. Did you want to talk through that, John, as well?
Yeah, I might just give a little bit of information around another a separate study that's running in coinciding time-wise. And so there's a current practice survey for people who already have some experience providing intervention in cycling. And the current practice survey is specifically focused on people who provide cycling interventions using an adapted bike or trike. So a bike or a modified bike with more postural supports and more kind of specialized modifications for someone with disability. So that's just a separate but concurrent study that's going on at the same time, and we'd really welcome people's input into that. We're gaining information around their experiences and on your experiences and the contextual factors that surround a young person with disability using a adapted bike. So the next slide will just give some, we'll give a shot of what the poster looks like. And yeah, I think ideally, in an ideal world, if you are interested in completing this survey, if you could complete it before interacting with change, just because some of the interventions may change and that kind of thing, or yeah, so just like to get a snapshot of your feedback before engaging with change. So the poster's there, and I can pass that on to you too through the same email if you're interested in that.
That's wonderful, John. And just another question, just so everyone can get a bit of an idea, I guess, from the next steps beyond chain, there's sort of plans for further research. Did you want to just talk through, I guess, what that might look like in a best case scenario? I guess what the purpose of what chain is leading to in the future?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, like, I suppose the nature of chain being the research being a feasibility trial, we're looking to try and move it forward in terms of getting that feedback and trying to empower us in ways that we can both expand or adapt it for different audiences. So that being feedback from the different and diverse practitioners may be able to kind of steer us towards content that we maybe needs to be improved upon, or maybe it needs to be kind of tailored a little bit more and made more accessible. And yeah, I suppose the idea being as well that we can expand out to different states and yeah, even internationally down the line if things go well. So yeah, it's a really important step, this initial stage, in kind of deeming its initial feasibility, and hopefully being able to kind of provide evidence from this feedback that we get with Chain's initial launch for springboarding it to more for more funding and further expansion out to other areas.
Wonderful. And if you could give a bit of a takeaway for each person from today, John, just in terms of encouraging friends or people that they know that might suit these groups of people that can complete it, what would you recommend as sort of the best feedback channels to get that out to their networks?
Yeah, so we've got both the poster and then a standardized kind of email that you can send and distribute out to your networks. So I'm happy, I'll pass on the email to Aidan with the links and the information embedded into it. And we're using snowball recruitment, which basically means that you can pass it on to a peer that you feel will be eligible or suitable. So you can really kind of distribute it locally to your networks as much as you can. And we've got a recruitment strategy within our ethics procedure anyway as well. So we'll be hoping to distribute via Facebook channels and that are linked specifically to like physio and OT and that kind of thing. But yeah, there's a Disability Support and Rec will be helping us out with the distribution and the recruitment side of things, and
Absolutely.
got a good idea of networks we're hoping to plug into.
And I guess just adding to that, that's where this steering group that's been put together with the great organizations we spoke about earlier, that's that second prong of that promotion avenue. So each of those organizations has made a massive role in committing their resources to supporting that promotion and I guess sharing of that research and of the actual module itself. So a huge thanks again to them, and a huge thanks to the Victoria government for supporting this project. And they support a lot of different projects, but it's great to see something like this where, as we all know, cycling has such a great foundation in basic motor skills, but also independence. And that's a lot of what this project's about, is building people's capacity to be independent. Now, we're just going to move ahead to, if there's any questions, feel free to unmute yourselves. If you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We're going to stay on the line after this sort of webinar just to have a chat with anyone that wants to find out a little bit more face-to-face. Obviously, it's quite a short webinar today, mostly because this is just a starting point. We're really excited to bring this module and this training program to you all. And we look forward to touching base with you over the next few months as hopefully you complete it and encourage others to do the same. Was there any questions?
Great work, John.
No worries, clear as muck. Thanks, everyone.
That's wonderful. So thank you all for attending today. As we've said, we'll be sending out information very shortly. We also look forward to bringing you some real life case studies. Highly recommend you check out Solve Disability Solutions, who are on the call. Oz Cycling, we're really grateful to them for being part of this as well. And as we mentioned, just have a look at the partners that we've got for this project. We're really thrilled. We think this will make a real difference. And if you haven't become a member of Disability Sport and Recreation, it's free. We have 3 kinds of membership. We have organizational, associate, and individual. So recommend checking that out so you can stay across this and other projects that we're running. We absolutely will send the pre-survey link, Tim, and we'll make sure that you can complete that. So have a look at freedomwheels.org.au just to see some great examples of custom cycling and training. So thank you so much, everyone. Feel free to stay on the line, but we'll stop this recording now. And thank you again for taking time out on a Tuesday.
Thanks, everyone.